Okay, so when you're really done with things and you're ready to bring this into After Effects, you want to save a copy of this, and most of you have already done this, and you want to give it a new number. So if this is 01, this would be 02, and I'll save it. And like I said before, anything that's in a folder is going to come in as a nested composition, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but sometimes if you don't know how to use a nested composition in After Effects, it's something you want to avoid for right now. So there's kind of two ways I could do this. So this is an adjustment layer over the whole sequence. So I'm going to go ahead and merge this group. So I'm going to right click on it, say merge group. Oops, oh, I see. Okay, it's set to pass through, that's right. Okay. Yeah, so if these are just a bunch of adjustment layers over the whole scene, okay, then it might be better to pull these out of the group and then delete that group. And let's see, what is this rectangle doing? Okay. If you have layers where they're not really doing anything, it's a good idea to delete them. And what you can do is, like here, there's a whole bunch of brightness and contrasts applied to it. And so you can kind of ask yourself, like, how can I do this with one brightness and contrast? So I'm going to actually, there's a hue and saturation and there's curves. I'm going to hide some of these guys. And yeah, if you want a brightness and contrast over the whole scene, then yes, you would need to leave that as a separate layer. So, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to check Use Legacy. And here I can start to play around with the brightness and contrast and just kind of get that look that's happening there. And then same thing with exposure, hue and saturation. This is being desaturated a little bit. So there we go. So if you can get things, if you can do adjustment layers to the whole thing, that just happens really just with one or two layers, that's the best bet. Okay, so anyway, now we have the Polaroid camera. So this is a good example of where we'd want to merge this whole group. So I'd go ahead and right click on this and say merge group. And now this is ready to be animated, basically. And I'd go through and sort of do this for each of these. So merge group, and I can do this to the whole folder. Now, if I come down, let's see, I'm trying to find another example. Let me actually open somebody else's file up. Let's try this one. Okay, so most of your files are probably going to look more like this, where you have smart objects and then masks. So if I'm ready to say, start animating this one, again, same thing, I would save a new copy, give it a new number, 2. And if it's a smart object, so I'll unlock this. If it's a smart object, I'll right click on it and, oops, sorry, you got to right click on the name. And I'll do rasterize layer. So if it's a smart object, you have to rasterize it first. And then I'll right click on the mask and say apply layer mask. And so now this is a destructive change, but because I have a copy of this, I have that original one, and this one is ready to be animated in After Effects. So then I would go through and do that to all these layers. And again, if you have a background, you really don't need it. So you can delete that layer if you have a photo, because you're probably gonna have a photograph. And any layers that aren't really doing anything, you just want to go ahead and delete them and clean them up. So these ones, oops. This one I want to delete because it's shied. But these two together, this adjustment layer on that background, this is one where I could hit Command E after selecting both of them, and it'll merge them together. And then I'll just rename this background. Okay. So let's talk about getting these set up for After Effects. So I'm going to go ahead and pretend I have a new folder, and I'll go make a new folder. Oops. And I'll call this my last name, project, or actually Romantic. We've already named the folders and stuff, so hopefully this is something you already have set up. I have my folder in here for graphics. I'm going to put in a folder for sound effects, which I'll come to a little bit later. And I'm just going to actually move one of these project files. Let's see, this is the one. I'll just use this one. And I'll move that into here. There we go. All right, so I'm gonna double check that this is all merged up. Yep, that looks good. With the butterfly and the bird, I'm gonna go ahead and just move those layers out just to be simpler for this demo. But we will talk about nesting compositions later on because they're really handy. And then there's the bird. There we go. And then I'll delete that folder. Okay, so I'm going to call this one ready. All right. So now I'll open up After Effects. So once your file is all done, and again, you might want to touch base with me just individually right before you do that. And this will take a minute to open. Okay. So I'm going to make a new project, and I'm going to go to File and Save As. And I'm just going to go ahead and save this project first. So I'm going to go to that desktop, to that folder, and I'm going to save it inside this top level folder. So don't save it in graphics, save it in the top level folder. And I'll call this my last name, Romatic 00, in case you want different versions. Then I'll go to Import File. I'll go find that one that's the correct one. You want to make sure you change this to Composition, Retain Layer Sizes. Make sure nothing is checked. Say Open. This should also say Composition, Retain Layer Sizes. And then I can double click on that composition and I'm ready to start parenting things, to adjust rotation points. And your first process is really going to be setting up rotation points and parenting. So like with this butterfly body, I'm going to shy a bunch of stuff. Let me see. A little bit of real estate here. Oh my goodness. My screen's too small. All right, so like with the butterfly body, for example, I'd want that rotation point to be at the top of the body. With the wing, let's see, which wing is this? I'll go ahead and test that rotation. Okay, so I probably want that rotation right there. The other rotation I would want right there. And so I would go through and adjust the rotations for things. I would test them out. Make sure that they're working right. And then I would parent both those layers to the butterfly body. And so now I could move this body, the butterfly's body around, and those wings will follow with it. So your first thing before you start animating is setting up rotation and parenting and anchor points as you need them. Once you get that all set up, then you're really ready to start animating. So that's that. I'm going to stop this recording.